Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Thank you. I'd like to make an executive session statement. The board met in executive session in a virtual meeting on Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, to discuss matters of employment, issues related to labor relations, matters related to litigation, and matters related to school safety and security. I would also like to announce that the board met in executive session on Thursday, March 26th, 2020, to discuss matters of employment, issues related to labor relations, matters related to litigation, and matters related to school safety and security. Our district mission statement. The Neshaminy community builds futures by empowering each child to become a productive citizen and a lifelong learner. Mrs. Burns, do we have any announcements?
No announcements.
Thank you, Mrs. Burns. Mr. Jones, Superintendent's Report, please.
Good evening. I have a statement I'd like to provide tonight instead of the typical report. I want to thank our school community as we move through these uncharted waters related to the COVID-19 concerns facing our nation and the world. Here locally, the school districts across Bucks County have worked cooperatively from the onset of the concern to support one another as we make tough decisions and move temporarily toward a new way of providing an educational program. Here at Neshaminy, first and foremost, our thinking has been the families of the school community, our students and their families, and our staff and their families. We recognize that in these times of uncertainty, we're being asked to juggle many new developments in our personal lives. New work expectations, for some, the loss of work and income, new restrictions on families being able to be together, and children at home around the clock asking serious questions about something that we as adults are desperately trying to learn more about on a daily basis. We have new terms that have become the center of our lives: social distancing and flattening the curve. These terms are used regularly now. We understand what a vital role success in accomplishing both social distancing and the success in flattening the curve will mean to lives all over this nation. Amidst all of this, we've been working to provide for the continuity of the educational experience for our students. Administrators and educators have fashioned our learning opportunities for all grades from K to 12. These have been rolled out in 2 phases. Phase 1 was live last week, and phase 2 became active this week. Our teachers will now be working on collaborative teams in subject areas across grade levels in the elementary grades and in teams connected to courses at the secondary level. These teams will prepare for phase 3 of online instruction, which will include formal teaching and learning that will involve instruction on new concepts and skills aligned with the grade level standards. But again, our primary focus and concern is for everyone's well-being. Our nurses and counselors are available. We'll be reaching out to those who we identify to be in need of support. Please do not hesitate to call your child's building principal if we can be of any assistance in any way. Another effort that the district has undertaken is the feeding of breakfasts and lunches for students enrolled in the federal free and reduced lunch program, or who may newly qualify due to recent changes of employment status of a parent. This program currently has a pickup location at Sandburg and Pequesson, and will expand to include all 6 elementary schools, adding Buck, Miller, Hoover, and Tawanka next week. All of the programs will change next week to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday delivery, and the meals for multiple days will be picked up on each of those days. So Monday, 2 days worth of meals, Wednesday, 2 days worth of meals, and Friday, 3 days worth of meals. We will begin this Friday with Saturday and Sunday meals as well, available for our students. Another important effort over the course of this closure has been to get Chromebooks into the hands of our students who are in need. Over 500 students were able to have this technology need met, and we're now in a second wave of soliciting and fulfilling more of the tech needs of our students. I thank the many individuals who've been involved in our work, helping to stabilize an uncertain situation and provide direction forward. I thank our custodians who've been at the front line, assuring that our buildings are clean. I thank our maintenance workers who helped make our facilities safer. Thanks to our extended to Aramark and our Neshaminy cafeteria workers for helping to establish our new food program and working to improve the number of students that we can reach through the implementation of ongoing modifications. Also, Our technology department has played a critical role in meeting the students' needs and assuring that we have the technology backbone ready for the increased needs associated with online learning. Currently, the state of Pennsylvania has closed all schools across the state for students up until April 9th. Given that that's the back end of our spring break week, we have targeted Monday, April 13th for a return to school. That said, any number of people would question whether we will actually be ready to open at that time. If we are extended any further, the Neshaminy Phase 3 for our continuation of instructional activities will commence. Our program will be robust, and our teachers will be ready to engage students in meaningful new learning. Either way, April 13th is the target for all of that. Finally, let me thank the district cabinet administrators who've led the charge to accomplish all of the above. We meet daily and support one another. Each has played and continues to play an important role in our overall success. I also would like to thank the board for the support of our employees and our children during these very trying times. Each member of the board continues to work with the best interest of all in mind. Together, we are stronger. As a Neshaminy school community, we are ready to continue to confront this challenge. And I thank everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Before we proceed to public comment, Mr. Jones, were we able to finish our YouTube conference, or did YouTube discontinue it for us?
YouTube discontinued it for us.
All right, so YouTube kicked us off. So we apologize to any of those residents, taxpayers, and anyone else that logged on that was expecting to see us on YouTube, but unfortunately, there was some type of policy issue that they discontinued our service. We're going to try and correct that.
Mr. Paratano, we have 48 participants, including the board members and the administrators that are here. So our room is pretty close to what it typically might be on a regular board night. And at the public comment time, if people had an interest, if they go to their participant tab, if they find that, one way of identifying that is there's a raise hand icon that they can click on. If they choose to do it that way, we can call on them. And if that doesn't work, once we've exhausted any hands that we see, people can just unmute themselves and let us know if they're finding trouble finding the raise hand symbol.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So we will move on to 3.05 public comment. I ask those that want to comment to restrict your comments to 3 minutes. State your name, the area that you live in, your occupation. Please no personal attacks. And because each person's connection is going to be different, please take your time when you speak and try and speak as clearly as possible. And please, if you could, spell your last name for the secretary so we can keep an accurate minutes. Thank you.
So I'm going to say that right now there are no raised hands. If anyone's having trouble indicating an interest in speaking, you're welcome to unmute yourself and say hello. Otherwise, we may have no public comment at this time, Mr. Paratano.
We'll give it a few more seconds to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will move on to routine matters.
I think Mr. Rodas was raising his
He did?
hand.
Mr. Rodas raised his hands?
Are you saying that out of jest and out of history, or did you actually see a raised hand?
I did see a raised hand, yes.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Go ahead.
He's not unmuted.
Yeah.
He needs to unmute himself.
Steve Rodas, I don't see the raised hand. I don't know if this was just reflex on the part of Mr. Tarente.
He's physically raising his hand on the screen, Joe.
Yeah.
There you are.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just wanted to say to the board, I think that this way of communicating is fantastic. It takes a little while to get used to it. It takes a little while to figure out how Zoom works if you don't have the proper numbers. But if you hook up to the email or however you got the notice of it, it's usually highlighted that you can join that way. I think that the new programming is going to be fantastic for the children. I really endorse this wholeheartedly because I was concerned that those really who need continuation of their services and their education would not get it, because I've never been a fan of these cyber charter schools for obvious reasons. So I give you a lot of credit in what you're doing, and if I don't get back in the future, I'd like to thank Mr. Jones for his service to the district, and I hope everything goes well for him. So thank you, and I got to go off to another meeting now. So I'll see you later.
Thank you, Mr. Rodas.
Thank you, guys.
Seeing you, Steve.
Mr. Jones, do we see any more hands raised?
I never saw any hands. I never saw Mr. Rodas' hands raised, but no, there are no mechanical hands. No. Oh, wait a minute. There is one here. Mr. or Ms. Schrader. I don't have a full name there.
Good evening, guys. My name's Steve Crater. I live in the Quincy Hollow area of Middletown. My question is, being new to all of us, what's going on as far as online learning? I've been having my daughter who's sitting next to me. Me and my wife have been having her do some of the online courses that appear to be optional, but I'm wondering as far as credited courses that actually matter per se, test taken, what's going on with that? Do we know? This is my first one of these. Don't really know what else to say, but I am curious about that.
Mr. Schrader, we're not going to answer questions directly right now. We're going to wait to the end of the meeting, and then Mr. Jones will address the concerns that you put forward. If you have, any other questions, we're going to have a second public comment period before the meeting ends, or you can add some more commentary now, and then Mr. Jones will address those types of questions at the end.
No, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, I've never done this before, so yeah, we'll do that.
That's great. We much appreciate your participation. Thank you. Mr. Jones, do you see anyone else?
No, you're free to move on. Thank you, Mr. Peritano.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay. Going to move on to section 4.0, routine matters. I'm going to ask for a master motion for 4.01 minutes, 4.02 treasurer's report, 4.03 check register and procurement card purchases, 4.04 budget transfers, 4.05 bids, 4.06 investments, and 4.07 exonerations. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sullivan. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman?
Yes.
Ms. Boyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Marrington?
Yes.
Mr. Parentano?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes 9-0. Thank you. Section 5.0 personnel certificate. Mr. Sullivan, please.
I'd like to pull out section 5.06 co-curricular appointments.
Yes,
And I'd like
sir.
to make I'd like to make a master motion to approve item 5.01, retirements, resignations, end of assignments, 5.02, leaves of absence, 5.03, revised returns from leaves, 5.04, appointments, 5.05, co-curricular resignations.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. There's been a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bowman. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Ms. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
9-0.
Motion passes 9-0. Mr. Sullivan?
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5.06, co-curricular appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. There's been a motion. May I hear a second?
Second.
I can't who said that?
Second.
Mr. Kovitz? Mr. Kovitz with a second. We have a second. Any comments, questions, or concerns on this item? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
No.
Ms. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes 8 yes, 1 no. We're going to move on to section 6.0. Mrs. Hollenbach, please.
All right, hold on a minute. I'm reading 6, right?
You're reading, you're going to pull out the last one, I believe, and you're going to read 1 through 6.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 6.01, leave of absence, 6.02, revised leave of absence, 6.03, retirements, resignations, end of assignments, 6.04, appointments. That's it.
Okay. We have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call. I'm sorry.
Did we get an answer? Is there an answer for the question I posed earlier?
John, I'm sorry, I don't have that answer for you.
I made the, Ms. Kozik advised that the person went back to their position, their previous position.
Okay, Don, thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. Where were we? We had a second. And
Yes.
you have comments and questions answered. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Ms. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
9-0.
Motion passes 9-0. Mrs. Hollenbach.
I'd like to make a motion for 6.05, co-curricular appointments.
We have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kovitz. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
No.
Ms. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes 8 yes, 1 no. Brings us to section 7.0, educational development. Mrs. Boyle, would you please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 7.01 out of district placements.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyle. We have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kovitz. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Miss Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
9-0.
Motion passes 9-0. Section 8.0, business operations. Would you please, Mrs. Hollenbeck?
I'd like to make a motion for 8.01 Sunday facility usage. I'm doing 8.02 separately, correct?
Correct. We have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Allen with a second. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Miss Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
9-0.
Motion passes 9-0. Mrs. Hollenbeck.
8.02 donation. Whereas the Albert Schweitzer Parent Teacher Organization has offered to donate 1 two-person swing set and 1 six-person swing set, including curbing for the mulch area, along with 2 park benches. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves to accept the aforementioned donation from the Albert Schweitzer Parent Teacher Organization.
Thank you, Mrs. Hollenbeck, for that motion. May we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sullivan. Any comments, questions, or concerns? I would just like to say on behalf of the board and the district, we want to thank the Albert Schweitzer Parent Teacher Organization. This donation amounts to $13,000 that, once again, our organizations are investing in our children and in our schools, and we want to know it's greatly appreciated. All right, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Miss Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
9-0.
Motion passes 9-0. Thank you. This brings us to section 9.0, policy. Would you please, Mrs. Boyle?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 9.01, the second reading of policy.
Thank you. We have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cirillo. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman,
Yes.
Miss Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Kovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Marrington,
Yes.
Mr. Parentano,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Cirillo.
Yes.
9-0.
Motion passes 9-0. Thank you. This brings us to other board business. Does any other board member have any board business? Hearing none, this will bring us to the second section of public comment. Anyone wishing to participate, Mr. Jones will once again call on you. And remember, it's 3 minutes. State your name, area you live in, and your occupation. And please, if possible, spell your last name for the record. Thank you.
All quiet on the hand front, Mr. Paratano. Again, if anybody's having trouble finding that raise hand symbol and does want to say something, you could just unmute yourself and say hello. I see no one.
You see no one. Okay. Thank you. We're going to close public comment. Before we start board comment, Mr. Jones, you had one question in the first comment period about what's going on in our education delivery. Could you answer the gentleman's question, please?
Yeah, Mr. Crater was asking about, I think it was an elementary student, but it could have been middle school. It really doesn't matter. We have, last week, we were out of school last week, and we had rolled out what we called our phase 1 of our learning opportunities. And Mr. Crater referenced the fact that these are activities that are provided for students. They are not being graded. They're good opportunities for them to stay connected with the learning, review, enrichment type activities. Phase 2 rolled out this week, and our focus is on this learning opportunities for these opening 2 weeks of this closure. As a matter of fact, that'll roll into next week as well, while our teachers in force, 600 plus teachers, are going to be involved in a whole variety of things so that we build a foundation for what we are calling phase 3. The following week after next is actually our spring break week. I suspect work will continue just because I know the nature of who we are here at Neshaminy, but it'll be that next Monday. So on the 13th, we're either going to be in a brick and mortar buildings, 10 of them here across the district, or we're going to be delivering a very unified, robust, teacher-driven new instruction program that's going to be tailored to the students in the grade level for the subjects, all of them, that they're signed up and registered for. And we have a plan to finish out the year that way if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'd also like to add that to Mr. Schrader or any other parent that has any concerns, to please contact your school principal. If you don't receive a satisfactory response or you don't understand, please contact our administration, be it either Mrs. Burkholder, who's responsible for K through 4, or Dr. McGee, who's responsible for 5 through 12. And of course, there's always our Director of Administration, Mr. Main, and our Superintendent, Mr. Jones. You can find everyone's email on the school district's website. That brings us to board comment. I'm just going to call names since don't sit around. Mr. Allen, do you have any comment?
Yes, I do, Mr. Pertano. I just want to comment, extend my gratitude, my respect, and my praise to the administration, staff, our teachers, who have, I feel, risen to this occasion. This is an extraordinary circumstance, and I think we've really shown our mettle of the Neshaminy community. And I just want to extend my personal gratitude for all they've done and keeping us in the loop, very much so. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mrs. Bowman, you have any comment?
Sure. I just wanted to thank the administration. I think you guys really kept it together. I wanted to thank all the teachers that got online right away to keep our kids engaged in academic activities. I can speak on behalf of my high schooler. Most of her teachers have been visible online, offering very rigorous activities to keep her busy during the day. So thank you for everyone at Neshaminy for all you're doing for our students. I also wanted to thank all the emergency responders and all the healthcare workers that are working through this circumstance. Thank you so much for your time. And I want everyone in the Neshaminy community to please stay at home. It's the best thing you can do. Limit your exposure to this awful disease. And I hope everybody stays safe and healthy.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowman. Mrs. Boyle, would you like to make any comment?
I'd just like to thank the administration, for orchestrating this new technical way of broadcasting to the community. I would certainly like to, emphasize that everyone should stay at home and try to be good, and we'll all get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyle. Excuse me. Mrs. Hollenbach, would you like to make any comment?
No comments other than what everybody else has already said. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Mrs. Hollenbach. Mr. Kovacs, would you like to make any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Piratano. Yeah, my favorite quote of all time is by a gentleman named Alvin Toffler. He's an author and a futurist, and he said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I think in light of our current situation, we see lots of evidence of that in our community, and I am very grateful for that. I know we're not the richest school district in the county. We're probably middle of the road in comparison to others. And from what I hear from my colleagues, despite that, we are probably one of the most prepared communities, and we have a really strong citizen base. I appreciate those people who've come to me through Facebook and some of the communities there to bring certain things to my attention, which I was able to bring to administration's attention. And administration has been very responsive to that. So again, I'm grateful to that. I'm grateful to all those who are on the call this evening, who are taking an active part in our community. So thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask you a question? I don't know how to raise the hand. I apologize.
We're at the board comment section right now, but did you miss it early?
I just wanted to double check. April 13th was a date we target to go physically back to school or do online education.
Mr. Jones, would you address that for the gentleman real quick?
Thank you.
April 13th is the date that we will go back physically as it currently stands.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Mr. Marrington.
Yeah, I'd like to also echo what several board members have said, thanking the administration, the teachers, all the entire Neshaminy community for doing what I think is a pretty darn good job of restoring some sense of normalcy to what are very abnormal times. And also, hope everybody to stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Marrington. Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Sullivan, you need to be unmuted.
Lower left-hand corner should be. There you go.
Well, I just had some good comments, which I'm probably not going to repeat now. But all I said was I echo what everyone else said, that administration's done a great job, and we all just got to stick together and do what we're supposed to do. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Cirillo?
Again, echoing the same sentiments. I appreciate everything that the administration and Mr. Jones has done. It's a uncharted territory with all this, and I think we have a very good group of people, educators, administration, everything. So gratitude to all the hard work that they've done.
Thank you, Mr. Cirillo. In closing, I just want to join with my other board members. I think our administration has really stepped to a level unseen and unneeded for many, many years. Our teachers and our staff have stepped up. Mrs. Bowman made comments about the community, our healthcare providers, those emergency responders. Everybody has really pulled together, and it's just it's terrible that it had to take an international health crisis for that to happen. But it's really great to see that when people are in need, people come together and want to do the right thing. I just want to toot Neshaminy's horn just a little bit here. While no district is prepared to deliver, the classroom experience in a virtual environment, Neshaminy has positioned itself over the last couple of years in our technology department to be able to offer almost every child a device and be able to plan for programs that will be able to help sustain the children while they're at home. A lot of that's due to Mr. Jones' programs that expanded that technology. And of course, our IT department that works tirelessly to make sure those devices are always up and ready to work. Again, I want to thank our entire Neshaminy community, and just stay safe and, stay at home if you can. Best advice we can give. We're all going to get through this. Saying that, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kovitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Does this require a roll call vote, Mr. Tarente?
You could dispense with the roll call on this
You
one.
can dispense with the roll call. All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.